The air in the courtroom was thick, not with heat, though the old ceiling fans barely moved, but with tension. Every seat was taken. People stood along the back wall, necks craning to see. The kind of crowd that shows up when a small town has nothing left to do but watch one of its own fall apart. At the defense table sat a 17-year-old boy named Ethan Calloway. He wore a navy blazer his mother had pressed the night before. His hair was combed back, his posture straight. But it was his face that people remembered most. That half-smile. The kind that said he knew something no one else did. His lawyer, a tired man named Roger Pendleton, shuffled papers beside him. Roger had been confident 2 weeks ago. Now he just looked nervous. On the other side of the room, the prosecutor, Linda Vargas, stood with her arms folded, watching the door at the back of the courtroom. She wasn't smiling. She hadn't smiled since the trial began. The judge, Honorable Martin Cross, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Are we ready to proceed?" Linda nodded once. "Yes, Your Honor. The state calls its final witness." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan's mother, Claire Calloway, gripped the armrest of her seat in the front row. Her knuckles went white. Beside her, Ethan's father, David, stared straight ahead, jaw tight, saying nothing. Ethan leaned back in his chair. That smile again. He didn't look at his parents. He didn't look at the jury. He looked at the door. Because he thought. He knew who was coming. He thought he had prepared for this, but he hadn't. The door opened. A boy walked in, 11 years old, small for his age. Brown hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes, those eyes, were fixed on the floor. He wore jeans and a hoodie that looked 2 sizes too big. In his, right hand, he carried a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside the bag was a notebook, blue, spiral-bound. The edges were worn, like it had been opened and closed 100 times. The courtroom went silent. Ethan sat up. His smile vanished. The boy's name was Owen Calloway, Ethan's younger brother. The prosecutor's voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "Your Honor, this witness holds first-hand testimony, documented evidence of conversations, behaviors, and confessions made by the defendant in the weeks following the disappearance of Mia Harding." Ethan's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection. This witness is a minor, Your Honor, and—" "Overruled," the judge said flatly. "The witness may proceed." Owen walked slowly toward the stand. He didn't look at anyone. Not his mother, who was crying now. Not his father, whose face had gone pale. And not Ethan. But Ethan was looking at him, his jaw clenched. His hands gripped the edge of the table. And for the first time since the trial started, he looked scared. Owen sat down in the witness chair. The bailiff approached with a Bible, but Owen shook his head. "I'll affirm," he said quietly. The prosecutor stepped forward. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Owen, can you tell the court what's in that notebook?" Owen's eyes lifted, just barely. He looked at the notebook in his lap. His fingers brushed the cover. "Everything," he whispered. The courtroom held its breath. "Everything he said, everything he did, everything I heard," Ethan's face went cold. And in that moment, everyone in the room knew. This wasn't just a trial anymore. This was a reckoning. 6 months earlier, life in the Calloway house looked normal, at least from the outside, the kind of normal you see in every suburban neighborhood. White fence, 2-car garage, a basketball hoop in the driveway that nobody used anymore. On Saturday mornings, Claire Calloway baked muffins. David mowed the lawn in straight, even lines. The neighbors waved when they drove by. But inside, the house breathed differently. Ethan was the golden child, star of the debate team, honor, roll every semester. Teachers loved him. Parents at school functions asked Claire, "How do you do it? How did you raise such a smart, polite young man?" She always smiled and said, "He's just always been that way." What she didn't say was that Ethan knew how to perform. He knew what adults wanted to hear. He knew how to tilt his head, soften his voice, make eye contact at just the right moment. He was 17, But he had been playing this game for years. Owen saw it. Owen always saw it. He was 11, quiet, the kind of kid who spent recess reading in the library instead of playing soccer. He didn't have many friends, but he didn't seem to mind. He liked puzzles. He liked watching people. And more than anything, he liked figuring out how things worked, including his brother. Owen had learned early on that if he stayed quiet, people forgot he was there. Adults talked over him. Ethan ignored him, and that was fine, because when you're invisible, you see everything. At dinner, Ethan would talk about his day, some debate tournament he won, some college recruiter who emailed him. Claire would beam. David would nod and say, "That's my boy." Owen would sit at the end of the table, fork in hand, watching. He noticed the way Ethan's smile never reached his eyes, the way his voice changed depending on who was listening, the way he could lie without blinking. One night after dinner, Owen was doing homework at the kitchen table. Ethan came downstairs, grabbed a soda from the fridge, and leaned against the counter. He was on his phone texting someone. Owen glanced up. "Who are you texting?" Ethan didn't look at him. "None of your business." "Is it Mia?" Ethan's thumb stopped moving. For just a second. Then he locked his phone and slipped it into his pocket. "Stay out of my life, Owen." He walked out. Owen sat there for a moment, pencil hovering over his math worksheet. He didn't know why he'd asked. He didn't even know Mia that well. She was a senior at Ethan's school, pretty, popular, the kind of girl everyone knew, but he'd seen her name on Ethan's phone before. More than once. And lately, Ethan had been different, tense, short-tempered. He'd snap at their mom over nothing. He'd stay up late in his room with the door locked. Owen didn't understand it, but he felt it. That shift, like the air pressure changing before a storm. A week later, Owen was in the hallway upstairs when he heard voices in Ethan's room. The door was cracked open just a little. Owen stopped. He knew he shouldn't listen, but he did. "Told you not to call me anymore." Ethan's voice, low, cold, a pause. Someone on the phone. "I don't care what you think you saw. You're wrong." Another pause, longer this time. "If you keep talking, Mia, I swear to God." Owen's breath caught. He stepped back away from the door and hurried to his room. He shut the door quietly and sat on his bed, heart pounding. He didn't know what he'd just heard, but he knew it wasn't good. That night, Owen couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in his head. The tone in Ethan's voice, the threat, the fear underneath it. He got up, turned on his desk lamp, and pulled out a blue notebook. It was supposed to be for school, math notes, history outlines. But Owen opened it to a blank page and wrote the date at the top. Then, in small handwriting, he wrote, "Ethan on the phone with Mia. He told her not to call. He sounded angry. He said, 'If you keep talking, I swear to God.'" Owen stared at the words for a long time. Then he closed the notebook and slid it into his backpack. He didn't know why he was writing it down. He just knew he needed to remember. Because something was coming. He could feel it. It happened on a Tuesday. Owen was in his 6th grade English class when the principal's voice came over the intercom. "Teachers, please check your email immediately. We have an urgent school-wide announcement." Mrs. Reynolds, Owen's teacher, frowned and opened her laptop. Her face changed as she read. She looked up at the class, forced a smile, and said, "Continue your reading. I'll be right back." She stepped into the hallway. Through the small window in the door, Owen saw her talking to another teacher. Both of them looked worried. When she came back in, she didn't say anything, but Owen noticed her hands were shaking. By lunchtime, everyone knew. Mia Harding was missing. She was 17, a senior at Riverside High, the same school Ethan attended. She'd been last seen Monday night, leaving a friend's house around 9 p.m. She never made it home. Her car was found Tuesday morning in the parking lot of Millers Creek Park. Doors locked, keys still in the ignition, phone on the passenger seat. But no Mia. The news spread. Fast. By the time Owen got home that afternoon, his mother was glued to the TV. The local station had a reporter standing outside the park, talking to a camera. Behind her, police cars lined the road. Officers walked through the trees with flashlights, even though it was still daylight. Claire's hand was pressed to her mouth. "That poor girl," she whispered. "That poor family." Owen set his backpack down by the door. "Do they know what happened?" "No," Claire said, eyes still on the screen. "They don't know anything yet." David came in from the garage. He stopped when he saw the TV. "Mia." "Harding?" Claire nodded. David exhaled slowly. "Ethan knows her, doesn't he?" "They're in the same grade," Claire said quietly. "I think they had a class together last year." Owen stood there, very still. His mother didn't know. His father didn't know. But Owen knew. Ethan and Mia weren't just classmates. The front door opened. Ethan walked in, earbuds in, backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked up and saw them all staring at the TV. "What's going on?" he asked, pulling out one earbud. "Mia Harding is missing," Claire said softly. "You know her, don't you?" Ethan's face didn't change. "Not even a little." "Yeah, I know her." "It's terrible," Claire said. "Her poor mother must be losing her mind." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it's bad." Then he walked past them, up the stairs and into his room. The door closed with a quiet click. David looked at Claire. He seemed calm. "He's probably in shock," Claire said. "It's a lot to process." But Owen wasn't so sure. He went upstairs, past Ethan's closed door, and went into his own room. He pulled out the blue notebook and opened it to the next blank page. He wrote the date. Then, "Mia Harding is missing," Mom told Ethan. He didn't seem surprised. He didn't ask questions, he just said, "Yeah, it's bad." Then he went to his room. Owen stared at the words. His stomach felt tight. He didn't want to think what he was thinking. But he couldn't stop. That night at dinner, no one talked much. Claire picked at her salad. David scrolled. Through his phone, reading updates. Ethan ate normally. He didn't look upset, he didn't look worried, he looked fine. Owen watched him across the table, and for the first time, he felt something he'd never felt toward his brother before. Fear. After dinner, Owen went back upstairs. He heard Ethan's door open. Footsteps in the hallway. Then Ethan's voice, low and sharp, talking on the phone. Owen crept closer. "I already told you. I don't know anything." Ethan's voice. "No, I wasn't there. I was home." "Yeah, my parents can confirm it." A pause. "Look, if the cops ask, just say we haven't talked in weeks, got it?" Another pause. "Good." The call ended. Owen heard the door open. He quickly stepped back into his room and closed the door most of the way, peeking through the crack. Ethan walked past, heading downstairs. His face was blank. Calm. Like nothing had happened. Owen waited until he heard the TV turn on downstairs. Then he opened his notebook again. Ethan was on the phone. He told someone to say they haven't talked in weeks. He said his parents can confirm he was home. He sounded like he was planning something. Owen closed the notebook and shoved it under his mattress. He didn't know what was happening, but he knew one thing. Whatever it was, Ethan was right in the middle of it. By Wednesday morning, the entire town of Riverside was talking about Mia Harding. Search parties formed. Volunteers combed through Millers Creek Park, the woods behind the high school, the empty lots on the edge of town. News vans from nearby cities arrived. Reporters stood on street corners holding microphones, asking anyone who passed, "Did you know Mia? Did you see anything unusual?" The police set up a tip line. Mia's mother appeared on the local news, sobbing, begging for anyone with information to come forward. Her father stood beside her, silent, his face like stone. At school, students whispered in the hallways. Some cried. Others just looked scared. Teachers tried to keep things normal, but no one could focus. Owen sat in the back of his math class, staring at his worksheet but not seeing the numbers. All he could think about was Ethan. The phone call, the tone in his voice. If the cops ask, just say we haven't talked in weeks. Why would Ethan say that? After school, Owen walked home slowly. When he got there, a police car was parked in the driveway. His heart stopped. He opened the front door carefully. Inside, 2 officers sat in the living room with his parents. Ethan was there too, sitting on the couch, hands folded in his lap. He looked calm, respectful, the perfect son. One of the officers, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, looked up when Owen walked in. "You must be Owen." Owen nodded. "I'm Detective Lisa Brennan," she said. "This is Officer Mills. We're just asking some routine questions. Nothing to worry about." Owen's mother gave him a tight smile. "Go upstairs, sweetie. We'll call you if we need you." Owen nodded again and headed for the stairs. But he didn't go to his room. He sat on the top step just out of sight and listened. Detective Brennan's voice was calm but direct. "Ethan, we're talking to everyone who knew Mia. You were in her AP history class last year, correct?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said. "Did you two stay in touch after that?" "Not really. We'd say hi in the hallway sometimes, but we weren't close." Owen's stomach twisted. That was a lie. He'd seen Mia's name on Ethan's phone, multiple times. "Where were you Monday night?" Detective Brennan asked. "I was here," Ethan said. "Home. I had a paper due Tuesday, so I was working on it all night." "Can anyone confirm that?" Claire spoke up immediately. "Yes, I was here. Ethan was upstairs in his room from about 7 o'clock on. I brought him a snack around 9. He was at his desk, typing." David nodded. "I saw him too. Around 10:30. I told him to get to bed soon. He said he just needed another hour." Detective Brennan wrote something down. "And you didn't leave the house at all that evening?" "No, ma'am," Ethan said. "I was here the whole time." Owen gripped the railing. He wanted to stand up. He wanted to shout, "He's lying. He's always lying." But he didn't, because he didn't have proof, just a feeling, and feelings don't mean anything to the police. Detective Brennan asked a few more questions. Ethan answered every one with perfect composure, polite, cooperative, helpful. When the officers finally stood to leave, Detective Brennan handed Claire a card. "If you think of anything else, give me a call." "Of course," Claire said. "We just hope you find her soon." "So do we," Detective Brennan said. She glanced at Ethan one more time. Her eyes lingered, just for a second. Then she nodded and walked out. Officer Mills followed. The door closed. Claire let out a long breath. "Thank God that's over." David rubbed his face. "They're just doing their job." Ethan stood up, stretched, and headed for the stairs. As he passed the spot where Owen was sitting, he paused. He looked down at his little brother, and he smiled. Not the smile he showed their parents, not the smile he showed the police. A different smile, cold, knowing. Then he walked past, into his room, and closed the door. Owen sat there frozen. That night, he pulled out his notebook again. The police came. Ethan said he was home all Monday night. Mom and Dad backed him up. Detective Brennan wrote it all down. Ethan lied, I know he did. But no one else knows. Owen stared at the page. His hand was shaking. He didn't know what to do. He was 11 years old. Who would believe him? So he did the only thing he could. He kept watching. And he kept writing. Owen had always been a quiet kid, the kind who faded into the background. At school, teachers sometimes forgot to call on him. At home, conversations happened around him, not with him. But that didn't mean he wasn't paying attention. He'd started the notebook, on impulse, just a way to make sense of things he didn't understand. But now it had become something else. Evidence. Every night, after everyone went to bed, Owen would sit at his desk with the blue notebook open in front of him. He'd write down what he'd seen that day, what he'd heard, what didn't. What? Add up. Thursday, October 12th. Ethan came home late from school, said he had debate practice. But I heard him on the phone before dinner. He said, Stop texting me. I told you we're done. His voice was angry. Who was he talking to? Friday, October 13th. Mom asked Ethan if he was okay, he said. He was fine. But at dinner his hands were shaking. He dropped his fork twice. Dad didn't notice, but I did. Saturday, October 14th. Ethan went out. He told Mom he was going to the library, but he took his gym bag. Why would he need a gym bag at the library? Owen didn't know if any of it mattered. Maybe Ethan really was just stressed about school. Maybe Owen was imagining things. But then, on Sunday night, something happened that made Owen sure he wasn't imagining anything. It was late, past 11. Owen had gone downstairs to get a glass of water. The house was dark and quiet. His parents were asleep. As he passed the laundry room, he heard a noise, a soft rustling. He stopped. The door was open just a crack. A light was on inside. Owen peeked through the gap. Ethan was there. He was crouched in front of the washing machine, pulling clothes out of a black trash bag. A hoodie, jeans, sneakers, all of them soaking wet. Owen's breath caught. Ethan stuffed the clothes into the washer, poured in detergent, and started the cycle. Then he stood there, staring at the machine as it filled with water. His face was blank, empty. After a moment, he turned and walked toward the door. Owen ducked back into the hallway, pressing himself against the wall. His heart pounded so hard he thought Ethan would hear it. But Ethan didn't look his way. He just walked past, up the stairs, and into his room. Owen stood there in the dark, shaking. Why were Ethan's clothes wet? Where had he been? Owen didn't go back to bed. He went straight to his room, pulled out the notebook, and wrote it all down. Sunday, October 15th, 11:20 p.m. Ethan was in the laundry room. He had a trash bag full of wet clothes, a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. He washed them in the middle of the night. Why were they wet? Where did he go? Owen closed the notebook and hid it under his mattress again. He couldn't tell his parents. They wouldn't believe him. They'd say he was making things up. They'd say Ethan was just doing laundry. But Owen knew better. Normal people don't wash clothes at 11 o'clock at night. Normal people don't hide wet clothes in trash bags. And normal people don't look the way Ethan looked, like someone who'd just buried a secret. By the second week, Mia Harding's face was everywhere. Posters on telephone poles, flyers in shop windows. Her photo, smiling, bright-eyed, full of life, stared out from every corner of Riverside. Beneath it, in bold letters, missing. Have you seen her? The police had no leads, no evidence, no body, and when people have no answers, they start looking for someone to blame. It started small. Whispers at the grocery store, sideways glances at the gas station. Then it grew. Someone on Facebook posted, "Why haven't the police looked harder at the people closest to her?" Someone else replied, "I heard she was seeing someone, a guy from school. They should check him." Then a name appeared. Ethan Calloway. No one said it outright, not at first. But the implication was there. He knew her. He was in her class. He'd been questioned. And in a small town, that was enough. Owen saw it happen in real time. At school, kids stared at him in the hallways. Some looked away when he passed. Others whispered behind their hands. One afternoon, a boy from his class, Tyler Grant, walked up to him at lunch. "Hey, Owen, is it true your brother knew Mia?" Owen didn't answer. "I heard the cops went to your house," Tyler said. "What did they ask him?" "Leave me alone," Owen said quietly. Tyler smirked. "If your brother did something, you should tell someone." Owen grabbed his tray and walked away. His hands were shaking. At home, things were worse. The phone rang constantly. Reporters asking for interviews. Neighbors calling to check in. Claire stopped answering. She just let it ring. David came home one evening with his jaw tight. "Someone spray-painted the garage door," he said. Claire's face went pale. "What did it say?" David didn't answer. He just walked into the kitchen and poured himself a drink. Owen went outside to look. In red paint, someone had written, "Liar." Claire tried to scrub it off, but the paint had already dried. She gave up after 20 minutes and went inside, crying. Ethan, meanwhile, seemed unfazed. He went to school, he came home, he did his homework, he ate dinner. He acted like nothing was wrong. But Owen noticed the cracks. Ethan stopped going out. He stopped answering texts in front of their parents. He stayed in his room with the door locked. And one night, Owen heard him crying. It was soft, muffled, like he was trying to keep it quiet. But Owen heard it through the wall. He sat on his bed staring at the wall that separated their rooms and didn't know what to feel. Was Ethan scared? Guilty? Both? Owen didn't know, and he hated that he didn't know. The next day, Claire sat both boys down at the kitchen table. Her eyes were red. She looked exhausted. "I need you both to understand something," she said. "People are going to say things, terrible things, but we are a family. We stay together, no matter what." She looked at Ethan. "You didn't do anything wrong, you know that, right?" Ethan nodded. "I know, Mom." Claire reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this." Owen sat there, silent. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe Ethan. But late that night, he pulled out the notebook again. "Mom says we're a family. She says Ethan didn't do anything, but she doesn't know what I know. She didn't see the wet clothes. She didn't hear the phone calls. She doesn't know he's lying." Owen closed the notebook and pressed his palms against his eyes. He felt trapped, between loyalty and truth, between love and fear, and he didn't know which one would win. 3 weeks after Mia disappeared, something shifted in Ethan. The pressure from the town didn't break him. It changed him. He stopped hiding. He stopped staying quiet. He started talking. It began with a post on social media. Ethan uploaded a photo of himself, clean-cut, serious, looking directly at the camera. The caption read, "I've been silent long enough. I knew Mia. She was a good person. But I had nothing to do with her disappearance. The police cleared me. My family knows the truth. It's time this town stops tearing innocent people apart based on rumors." Within an hour, the post had 200 likes. By the next morning, it had been shared across the county. People started commenting, some supportive, some still suspicious. But Ethan didn't back down. He replied to comments. He posted updates. He acted like a victim. And slowly, people started to believe him. A local podcast picked up the story. They interviewed students from Riverside High. Some said Ethan was being unfairly targeted. Others said the real killer was still out there, and the town was wasting time pointing fingers. Ethan was invited on the podcast. He accepted. Owen listened to it late one night on his tablet, earbuds in, lying in bed. Ethan's voice came through calm and measured. "I understand why people are scared," he said. "I'm scared too. Mia deserves justice. But destroying innocent lives won't bring her back." The host asked, "Do you think the police are doing enough?" "I think they're doing their best," Ethan said. "But I also think this town needs to stop looking for someone to blame and start looking for the truth." Owen felt sick, because Ethan sounded so convincing, so sincere, so right. If Owen didn't know what he knew, he would have believed him too. At school, the tide turned. Kids who had whispered about Ethan before now defended him. Some even wore wristbands that said "Daxam's justice for Mia." But they also said, "Stop the witch hunt." Ethan walked the hallways with his head high. He didn't avoid people anymore. He smiled, he talked, he let people see him. And the more visible he became, the more untouchable he seemed. One evening, Owen was in the kitchen doing homework when Ethan came downstairs. He opened the fridge, grabbed a soda, and leaned against the counter. He looked at Owen. Really looked at him. "You've been quiet lately," Ethan said. Owen didn't look up from his math book. "I'm always quiet." "Yeah, but quieter than usual." Ethan took a sip of his soda. "You doing okay?" Owen's pencil froze. "I'm fine." Ethan nodded slowly. Good, because I know this whole thing has been hard on everyone, including you. Owen finally looked up. Ethan's face was calm, friendly even, but his eyes were different, watching, measuring. If you ever need to talk, Ethan said, I'm here. Owen's throat tightened. Okay. Ethan smiled. Then, he walked out of the kitchen back upstairs. Owen sat there staring at his homework, his heart pounding. That wasn't concern. That was a warning. Ethan knew Owen was watching him, and he wanted Owen to know that he knew. That night, Owen wrote in his notebook, Ethan talked to me today. He said if I need to talk, he's here. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like he was checking to see if I'd say anything. Like he was reminding me to stay quiet. Owen closed the notebook and shoved it deeper under his mattress. He was starting to realize something terrifying. Ethan wasn't just getting away with it. He was enjoying it. It was a Thursday night, late. The house was dark except for the glow of the TV downstairs where David had fallen asleep on the couch. Owen had gone to bed an hour ago, but he couldn't sleep. He lay there staring at the ceiling, thoughts spinning. Then he heard voices, muffled, coming from Ethan's room. Owen sat up slowly. He slipped out of bed and crept to his door, opening it just enough to peer into the hallway. Ethan's door was closed, but sound traveled in old houses, especially at night. Owen stepped into the hallway, barefoot, moving carefully. He stopped, just outside Ethan's door, and pressed his ear close. Ethan was on the phone. I told you, stop worrying. Ethan's voice was low, irritated. No one knows anything. A pause. Because she's not going to say anything. She can't. Owen's stomach dropped. She threatened me, okay? Ethan continued. She said she'd tell everyone about everything, so I handled it. Another pause. Longer this time. Ethan's voice dropped even lower. She shouldn't have come back that night. I told her to stay away. But she didn't listen. Owen's hands went cold. I didn't have a choice, Ethan said quietly. She was going to ruin everything. Silence. Then Ethan laughed, short, bitter. Yeah, well, it's over now. Owen stepped back from the door. His heart was hammering so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. He turned and walked quickly back to his room. He shut the door, locked it, and sat on his bed, shaking. She shouldn't have come back that night. I handled it. It's over now. Owen grabbed the notebook from under his mattress. His hand was trembling so much he could barely hold the pen. He wrote the date. Then, Ethan was on the phone. He said Mia threatened him. He said she came back that night. He said, I handled it. He said, it's over now. He said she was going to ruin everything. He said he didn't have a choice. Owen stared at the words. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. This wasn't just a feeling. This was a confession. He closed the notebook and shoved it back under the mattress. Then he sat there in the dark, trying to breathe. He wanted to run downstairs, wake up his dad, show him the notebook, tell him everything. But what if they didn't believe him? What if they thought he was making it up? What if they believed Ethan instead? Owen lay back down, staring at the ceiling again. He didn't sleep that night. He just replayed the words over and over in his head. She shouldn't have come back that night. I handled it. And for the first time, Owen understood something that made his blood run cold. Ethan wasn't scared of getting caught. He was proud of what he'd done. The next night, Ethan came into Owen's room. Owen was at his desk, pretending to do homework. He heard the door open and looked up. Ethan stood in the doorway. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked around the room, at the desk, the bookshelf, the bed. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Owen's pulse quickened. Hey, Ethan said casually. He sat down on the edge of Owen's bed, hands resting on his knees. You got a minute? Owen nodded slowly. Ethan smiled. Not the fake one he used with their parents. Not the charming one he used at school. This one was softer. Almost gentle. I wanted to check in with you, Ethan said. I know things have been weird lately, with everything going on. Owen didn't respond. I just want to make sure you're okay, Ethan continued. Because you're my brother, and brothers look out for each other, right? Owen's throat felt tight. Right. Ethan leaned forward slightly. His voice stayed calm, steady. You know, people say a lot of things when they're scared or confused. They make stuff up. They think they heard something, but they didn't really understand it. Owen's hands gripped the edge of his chair. Sometimes, Ethan said, people even convince themselves they saw something that didn't happen, because their imagination gets the better of them. He paused, let the words hang in the air. Then he smiled again. But you're smart, Owen. Smarter than most kids your age. You know the difference between what's real and what's just in your head. Owen's heart was pounding so hard he thought Ethan could hear it. Ethan reached over and put a hand on Owen's shoulder. His grip was firm, not painful, but firm. We're family, Ethan said quietly. And family protects each other no matter what, you understand? You. That, don't you? Owen nodded. He didn't trust his voice. Good, Ethan said. He gave Owen's shoulder a squeeze, then stood up. Because if something ever happened to this family, if someone said something they shouldn't have, it would destroy us. Mom, Dad, you, me, everything. He walked to the door, then stopped and looked back. You wouldn't want that, would you? Owen shook his head. Ethan's smile widened. I didn't think so. Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him. Owen sat there, frozen. His shoulder still felt the pressure of Ethan's hand. He wanted to cry, he wanted to scream, but he didn't do either. He just sat there staring at the closed door. After a long time, he turned back to his desk and pulled out the notebook. His hands were still shaking. He wrote, Ethan came into my room. He said brothers protect each other. He said people make things up when they're scared. He said if I said something I shouldn't, it would destroy the family. He said, you wouldn't want that, would you? He was smiling. But it wasn't a real smile. It was a threat. Owen closed the notebook and buried it at the bottom of his backpack this time, not under the mattress. Somewhere Ethan wouldn't think to look, because now Owen understood something else. Ethan didn't just want him to stay quiet. Ethan was making sure of it, and if Owen didn't listen, there would be consequences. Detective Lisa Brennan hadn't given up. While the rest of Riverside moved on, some convinced Ethan was innocent, others just tired of talking about it. She kept digging. She went back through witness statements, reviewed timelines, re-interviewed Mia's friends, and the more she dug, the more something felt off. Ethan Calloway's story was too clean, too perfect, so she decided to take a different approach. She came back to the Calloway house on a Saturday afternoon, unannounced. Owen was in the front yard, bouncing a basketball half-heartedly against the driveway. When he saw the unmarked car pull up, he stopped. Detective Brennan got out. She wore jeans and a jacket. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp. Hey, Owen, she said. Owen held the basketball against his hip. Hi. Is your brother home? He's inside. She nodded. Then she looked at Owen for a long moment. You doing okay? Owen shrugged. I guess. That's a tough answer, she said gently. Mind if I sit for a minute? Owen hesitated. Then he nodded. Detective Brennan sat down on the front step. Owen sat beside her, keeping a little distance between them. For a while, neither of them said anything. Then Detective Brennan spoke. You know, I've been doing this job for a long time. And one thing I've learned is that kids see things adults miss. Owen didn't respond. They notice things, she continued. Little things, changes in behavior, stuff that doesn't add up. Owen's grip on the basketball tightened. I'm not here to pressure you, Detective Brennan said quietly. I'm just here to listen. If you ever want to talk about anything, you can call me anytime. She pulled a card from her pocket and held it out. Owen stared at it. He didn't take it. I'm not saying you have to, she said. I'm just saying, If you ever feel like something's not right, I'm here. Owen finally reached out and took the card. He looked at it. Her name, her number, nothing else. Thanks, he said quietly. Detective Brennan stood up. Take care of yourself, Owen. She walked back to her car and drove away. Owen sat there on the step, staring at the card in his hand. He wanted to run after her. He wanted to pull out the notebook and show her everything. Every word, every date, every late-night conversation he'd overheard. But he couldn't, because Ethan's words were still in his head. If something ever happened to this family, if someone said something they shouldn't have, it would destroy us. Owen folded the card and slipped it into his pocket. Then he went inside. Ethan was in the living room, watching TV. He glanced up when Owen walked in. Who was that? Ethan asked. Nobody, Owen said. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Didn't look like nobody. Owen didn't answer. He just walked past, up the stairs, and into his room. He pulled the card out of his pocket and stared at it. Detective Lisa Brennan. She believed him. He could feel it. She knew something was wrong, but knowing and proving were two different things. Owen slipped the card into his notebook between 2 pages and hid it in his backpack again. One day, he thought. One day he'd be ready, but not yet. Owen stopped sleeping. Not completely, but every night he'd wake up at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, heart racing, drenched in sweat. He'd dream about Mia, about Ethan, about the phone call he'd overheard. She shouldn't have come back that night. The words looped in his head like a broken record. At school, his grades started slipping. Teachers noticed. Mrs. Reynolds pulled him aside one afternoon and asked if everything was okay at home. Owen said yes. She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. At EI home, things were worse. Claire tried to keep the family together. She cooked big dinners. She asked questions about everyone's day. She smiled too much, talked too fast, laughed too loud. David was the opposite. He barely spoke. He came home from work, ate in silence, and disappeared into the garage or the basement. He stopped asking Ethan about school. He stopped asking Owen anything at all, and Ethan was thriving. He'd become something of a local figure, the boy who'd been falsely accused, the victim of a witch hunt. He gave an interview to the school newspaper. He talked about resilience, about standing up for the truth, about not letting fear control your life. People ate it up. Owen watched it all from the sidelines, silent and invisible as always. But inside, he was breaking. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He sat at his desk, the notebook open in front of him, and read through every entry he'd written. All the dates, all the conversations, all the strange, terrible things he'd seen and heard. It was all there. Everything. But what was he supposed to do with it? If he told his parents, they'd defend Ethan. They always did. If he went to the police, would they even believe an 11-year-old kid? Especially when Ethan had already been cleared. And if Ethan found out Owen had talked, Owen didn't want to think about that. He closed the notebook and pressed his forehead against the desk. He felt trapped, like the walls were closing in, like no matter what he did, it would be wrong. He thought about Mia, about her mother on TV, crying, begging for answers. She deserved the truth. But what about Owen? What about his family? What about him? He sat there for a long time, tears sliding down his face, hating himself for being too scared to speak. Then from the other side of the wall, he heard it. Ethan, laughing, not a cruel laugh, just normal. Like everything was fine, like nothing had happened. Owen lifted his head. He wiped his eyes, and something inside him shifted. He pulled the notebook toward him and opened it to a blank page. He picked up his pen. I don't know what to do, but I know I can't keep this inside forever. Mia deserves justice, even if it costs me everything. He closed the notebook and slid it back into his backpack. He still didn't know when he'd be ready, but for the first time he knew that one day he would. It was a Monday morning when the call came in. A man walking his dog near Miller's Creek Park had found something in the tall grass near the edge of the woods. Something that didn't belong there. A knife. 8 inches long. Fixed blade. Stainless steel. No rust. No dirt. Spotless. Too clean. Detective Brennan was on the scene within 20 minutes. She crouched down beside the evidence marker, studying the knife through the clear plastic bag. "It's been wiped," said Officer Mills, standing behind her. "Not a single print." "Or it's been washed," Brennan said. "Thoroughly." She turned, the bag over in her hands. The handle was black rubber, standard kitchen knife, the kind you could buy at any big box store in the country. "Run it anyway," she said. "Check for trace DNA, fibers, anything." Mills nodded and took the bag. Brennan stood up and looked around. The park was quiet. A few. Joggers on the path in the distance, birds in the trees. Nothing unusual. But this spot, tall grass hidden from the main trail, it was deliberate. Someone had put the knife here, not dropped it, placed it. The question was, why? By that afternoon, the news was everywhere. Evidence found in my Harding case. The local station ran it as breaking news. Within hours, the story had spread across the county. Reporters swarmed the park. The police issued a statement. "An item of interest has been recovered. We are investigating its connection to the case." At the Calloway house, the mood shifted. Claire stood in the kitchen, staring at the TV. Her hand covered her mouth. "They found a knife," she whispered. David sat at the table, arms crossed. "Doesn't mean anything. Could be anyone's." "But what if—" "Claire." David's voice was firm. "Don't." Ethan came downstairs. He looked at the TV. His face didn't change. "What kind of knife?" he asked. Claire turned to him. "They didn't say. Just that it's evidence." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay." Then he walked to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and went back upstairs. Owen was sitting on the bottom step, out of sight. He'd heard everything, and he knew. He knew that knife. He'd seen it before, not the exact one maybe, but one just like it. In their kitchen, in the wooden block on the counter next to the stove. He got up quietly and went into the kitchen. Claire and David were still in the living room, glued to the news. Owen walked to the counter. He looked at the knife block, 7 slots, 6 knives, 1 missing. His stomach turned. He looked toward the living room, then back at the block. He didn't touch it. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring. Then he turned and walked upstairs. That night, he pulled out the notebook. "They found a knife near the park. It was clean, too clean. I checked our kitchen. One of our knives is missing. The same size, the same type. I don't think it's a coincidence." He closed the notebook and sat back on his bed. The pieces were all there. He just didn't know how they fit together yet. But the police were getting closer. And so was Owen. He could feel it. Owen carried the notebook with him everywhere now. Not in his backpack, not under his mattress. In his jacket pocket. Close. Where he could feel it. He didn't know why. Maybe because it was the only proof he had. The only thing that made him feel like he wasn't going crazy. Or maybe because he knew, deep down, that he was running out of time. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Owen was walking home from school, head down, hands in his pockets. The weight of the notebook pressed against his ribs. As he turned onto his street, he saw the police car again, parked in the driveway, same as before. His heart sank. He walked faster. Inside, Detective Brennan was back. This time she wasn't alone. Another detective, older, gray hair, sharp suit, sat beside her. His name was Detective Paul Granger. He looked like someone who didn't smile much. Ethan sat on the couch. Claire and David sat on either side of him, like shields. Owen slipped in through the front door and stood near the stairs, trying to be invisible. Detective Brennan noticed him. She nodded. "Owen, good. We'd like to talk. To you too, if that's okay." Claire stood up immediately. "He's 11. He doesn't need to be involved in this." "We're just asking questions, Mrs. Calloway," Brennan said calmly. "Nothing formal." David looked at Owen. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Owen nodded. Detective. Granger leaned forward. His voice was rough, no nonsense. Ethan, we need to ask you about the knife we found. Ethan didn't flinch. Okay. Do you recognize it? I saw it on the news, Ethan said. But no, I don't recognize it. It's a kitchen knife, Granger said. Standard size, the kind most homes have. Ethan nodded. Sure, we have knives like that. We'd like to take a look at your kitchen, Brennan said. With your permission. Claire's face went pale. Why? Just routine, Brennan said. We're checking homes in the area, trying to rule things out. David stood up. You need a warrant for that. We can get one, Granger said flatly. But it'll be easier if you cooperate. The room went silent. Finally, David nodded. Fine. Look. Brennan and Granger stood. They walked into the kitchen. Claire followed, wringing her hands. David stayed in the living room, jaw tight. Ethan sat on the couch, perfectly still. Owen stood by the stairs, his hand on the notebook in his pocket. From the kitchen he heard Detective Brennan's voice. Mrs. Calloway, do you know how many knives should be in this block? Claire's voice was shaky. I think 7, maybe 8, I'm not sure. I'm not. There are 6 here, Brennan said. A pause. Do you know where the other one is? No, Claire said. I don't. We might have lost one. Or it broke. I don't remember. Owen's chest tightened. Granger's voice came next. When's the last time you used this set? I don't know, Claire said. I use them all the time. For cooking. And you don't remember one going missing? No, I'm sorry, I don't pay attention to that sort of thing. Brennan came back into the living room. Her eyes went straight to Ethan. Ethan, do you ever use the kitchen knives? Sometimes, Ethan said, for like making a sandwich or something. Do you remember one going missing? No. Brennan studied him. You sure? Ethan met her gaze. I'm sure. Granger came back into the room, hands in his pockets. He looked at Brennan. She shook her head slightly. They didn't have enough. Brennan turned to Claire and David. Thank you for your cooperation. If you think of anything, give us a call. David nodded stiffly. Of course. The detectives headed for the door. But just before Brennan stepped outside, she stopped. She looked back at Owen. Their eyes met, and in that moment Owen felt something. Crack inside him. She knew. She knew something was wrong, she just couldn't prove it. But Owen could. Brennan gave him a small nod. Then she left. The door closed. The house was silent. Claire sank into a chair, her face in her hands. David stood by the window, staring out at nothing. Ethan stood, upstretched and headed for the stairs. As he passed Owen, he stopped. He leaned in close. His voice was barely a whisper. You didn't say anything. Good. Then he walked upstairs. Owen stood there, frozen. His hand was still on the notebook. His heart was pounding. And suddenly he knew. He couldn't do this anymore. He couldn't carry this alone. He couldn't protect Ethan. He couldn't keep pretending. Mia Harding deserved better, and so did Owen. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat at his desk, staring at the notebook. He read every entry, every date, every word. And then, slowly, he made a decision. The next morning, Owen didn't go to school. He told his mom he didn't feel well. She didn't argue. She just told him to rest. As soon as she left for work, Owen got dressed. He put the notebook in his backpack. He grabbed Detective Brennan's card from between the pages. And he walked out the front door. He walked for 20 minutes all the way to the police station on 4th Street. His hands were shaking. His stomach was in knots. But he didn't turn back. He walked through the front doors, up to the desk, and asked for Detective Brennan. The officer at the desk looked at him. You got an appointment, kid. Owen shook his head. No, but she told me I could talk to her any time. The officer studied him for a moment. Then he picked up the phone. 5 minutes later, Detective Brennan came down the hall. When she saw Owen standing there, her expression softened. Owen, she said quietly. You okay? Owen shook his head. Brennan stepped closer. You want to talk? Owen nodded. His voice cracked. I have something to show you. Brennan led him to a small room. Quiet, private, just the two of them. Owen sat down. He pulled the notebook out of his backpack and set it on the table. His hands were still shaking. Brennan looked at the notebook, then at Owen. What is this? She asked gently. Owen swallowed hard. Everything. He opened the notebook, turned to the first page, the first date, the first entry, and he started to talk. He told her about the phone, call, about the wet clothes, about the threat in his room, about the missing knife. He told her everything. And as he spoke, the weight he'd been carrying for months finally began to lift. When he finished, Brennan was quiet for a long time. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over his. You're very brave, Owen, she said softly. Do you know that? Owen's eyes filled with tears. He shook his head. You are, she said, and I promise you, we're going to make this right. She picked up the notebook. Can I keep this? Owen nodded. Brennan stood up. I'm going to need you to wait here for a little while. Is that okay? Owen nodded again. She left the room, and for the first time in months, Owen felt like he could finally breathe. The courtroom was packed, every seat taken. People lined the walls. News cameras crowded the back. The air buzzed with whispers, tension, anticipation. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. It had taken 4 months to get here, 4 months of investigation, evidence collection, legal motions, and media frenzy. The story had gone national. Podcasts dissected every detail. Online forums debated guilt and innocence. Riverside, once a quiet town, had become a spectacle, and at the center of it all sat Ethan Calloway. He wore a dark suit. His hair was neatly combed. He sat beside his lawyer, Roger Pendleton, hands folded on the table. His face was calm, unreadable, but his eyes betrayed him. They flicked. Around the room, restless, searching. Across the aisle sat the prosecution. Linda Vargas, sharp and focused, reviewing her notes one last time. Behind her, in the gallery, sat Mia Harding's parents. Her mother's eyes were red and hollow. Her father sat stone-faced, gripping his wife's hand. And in the front row on the defense side sat Claire and David Calloway. Claire looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. David stared straight ahead, his jaw set, his hands clenched in his lap. Owen was not sitting with them. He was in a side room, waiting. A victim advocate sat with him, a kind woman named Ms. Delgado, who'd been assigned to help him through this. She didn't say much. She just sat beside him, steady and calm. Owen's hands were shaking. He couldn't stop them. In a few minutes, he would walk into that courtroom. He would sit in the witness chair, and he would tell the truth. In front of everyone. In front of his parents, in front of Ethan. Ms. Delgado put a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to be scared, she said gently. You just have to be honest. Owen nodded, but he was scared, terrified. Inside the courtroom, the judge entered. Everyone stood. All rise, the Honorable Martin Cross presiding. Judge Cross took his seat. The room settled. We will now hear testimony from the state's key witness, he said. Bailiff, please bring in the witness. The side door opened. Owen walked in. The room went silent. Every head turned. Every eye locked on the small boy in the oversized hoodie walking slowly toward the stand. Claire gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. David's face went pale. Ethan sat very still. His jaw tightened. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Owen didn't look at any of them. He kept his eyes on the floor as he walked. One step at a time. He reached the witness stand and climbed up into the chair. It was too big for him. His feet didn't touch the ground. The bailiff approached. Do you swear to tell the truth? The whole truth and nothing but the truth? Owen's voice was quiet. I do. Linda Vargas stood. She approached the stand slowly, her expression gentle. "Good morning, Owen," she said. "Good morning," Owen whispered. "I know this is difficult," Vargas said, "but I need you to tell the jury what you know. Can you do that?" Owen nodded. "For the record," Vargas said, "can you state your relationship to the defendant?" Owen's voice cracked. "He's my brother." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Vargas continued. "Owen, in the weeks following Mia Harding's disappearance, did you notice anything unusual about your brother's behavior?" Owen swallowed hard. "Yes." "Can you tell us what you noticed?" Owen's hands gripped the armrests of the chair. "He was different. He stayed in his room a lot. He was on the phone late at night. He seemed nervous, but also confident, like he knew something no one else did." "Did you ever hear him talking about Mia?" Owen nodded. "Yes." "What did he say?" Owen's voice was barely audible. "I heard him on the phone one night. He said, 'She shouldn't have come back that night. I handled it.'" The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Cross banged his gavel. "Order!" Vargas let the moment settle. Then she continued. "Owen, did you document what you heard?" "Yes, I wrote it down in a notebook." "Why did you do that?" Owen's eyes filled with tears. "Because I was scared, and I didn't know who to tell." Vargas walked to the evidence table and picked up the blue notebook, now sealed in a plastic evidence bag. She held it up. "Is this the notebook?" Owen nodded. "Yes." Vargas handed it to the jury foreman, who examined it before passing it down the line. "Owen," Vargas said gently, "did your brother ever threaten you?" Owen's breath hitched. "Yes." "Can you tell us what he said?" Owen closed his eyes. "He came into my room one night. He said, 'Brothers protect each other.' He said if I ever said something I shouldn't, it would destroy the family. He told me, 'You wouldn't want that, would you?'" Claire let out a sob. David's hand covered his face. Ethan sat motionless. His eyes were locked on Owen. Vargas took a step closer. "Owen, why did you finally come forward?" Owen looked up, tears streamed down his face. "Because Mia deserved the truth, and I couldn't carry it anymore." Vargas nodded. "Thank you, Owen. No further questions." She sat down. Roger Pendleton stood. He looked uncomfortable. He approached the stand. Slowly. "Owen," he said, his voice softer than usual. "You love your brother, don't you?" Owen's voice broke. "Yes. And you'd do anything to protect your family, wouldn't you?" "Objection," Vargas said. "Leading." "Sustained," Judge Cross said. Pendleton rephrased. "Owen, is it possible you misunderstood what you heard?" Owen shook his head. "No. But you were young. You were scared. It's possible your imagination." "I didn't imagine it," Owen said, his voice stronger now. "I heard what I heard. I wrote it down. It's all true." Pendleton paused. He looked at the jury, then back at Owen. "No further questions," he said quietly. Owen was excused. Ms. Delgado met him at the side door and let him out. As Owen passed the defense table, he looked at Ethan. Just for a second. Ethan stared back. His face was hard, cold, but his eyes were full of something Owen had never seen before. Fear. Ethan leaned forward slightly and whispered just loud enough for Owen to hear. "You destroyed everything." Owen stopped. He looked his brother in the eye. And for the first time in his life, he didn't look away. "You destroyed it first," Owen said. Then he walked out. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Judge Cross cleared his throat. "We'll recess for the day. Court resumes tomorrow at 9 a.m. The gavel fell, and Owen Calloway, 11 years old, small, quiet, invisible, had just changed everything. The verdict came 3 days later. The jury had deliberated for 11 hours. The courtroom was silent as they filed back in. No one moved. No one breathed. The foreman stood. Judge Cross asked the question everyone had been waiting for. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" We have, Your Honor. In the matter of the state versus Ethan Callaway, on the charge of second-degree murder, how do you find? The foreman looked at Ethan. Guilty. The word echoed through the room like a gunshot. Mia's mother collapsed into her husband's arms, sobbing. Her father closed his eyes and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Claire Callaway let out a strangled scream. David sat frozen, staring at nothing. Ethan didn't move. He just sat there, hands on the table, staring straight ahead. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Ethan didn't react. Judge Cross banged his gavel. Order. Order in the court. The room settled, but the air was still. Electric. Sentencing will be scheduled for 3 weeks from today, Judge Cross said. The defendant will remain in custody until that time. This court is adjourned. The gavel fell one last time. Guards approached Ethan. He stood slowly, hands behind his back as they cuffed him. As they led him out, he turned his head once, just once, and looked toward the gallery, toward his parents, toward Owen. Owen was sitting in the back row with Ms. Delgado. He met Ethan's gaze. There was no anger in Ethan's eyes now, no arrogance, no defiance, just emptiness. Then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Mia's parents gave a brief statement. Her mother, voice shaking, said, "We finally have justice for our daughter, but nothing will bring her back." Claire and David left through a side exit, heads down, saying nothing. Owen didn't talk. To the press. Ms. Delgado walked him to a waiting car, shielding him from the cameras. As they drove away, Owen looked out the window at the courthouse, at the crowds, at the chaos, and he felt nothing. Not relief, not victory, just exhaustion. 2 weeks later, Detective Brennan asked to meet with Owen one more time. They sat in the same small room at the police station where it had all started. Brennan set a folder on the table. She opened it carefully. "Owen," she said gently, "there's something you need to know." Owen looked up. "After the trial, we continued investigating," Brennan said. "We wanted to understand the full picture, and we found something." She pulled out a photograph. It showed a text message thread between Ethan and someone listed as Mom. Owen's stomach dropped. "These messages were recovered from Ethan's phone," Brennan said. "They were deleted, but our tech team was able to retrieve them." Owen read the messages. "Ethan, she's threatening to tell everyone about the money, about what you did. Mom, then you need to handle it. Ethan, how? Mom, however you have to. We can't let this family fall apart." Owen's hands went cold. Brennan spoke quietly. "Owen, your mother knew. She didn't commit the act, but she encouraged it. She enabled it." Owen looked up at her, his voice shaking. "What does that mean?" "It means she'll be charged as an accessory," Brennan said. "She'll face consequences, too." Owen felt the world tilt. His brother, his mother. Both guilty. Brennan reached across the table. "I'm sorry, Owen, I know this is a lot." Owen's voice was barely a whisper. "My dad, does he know?" "Not yet," Brennan said. "But he will." Owen sat back in his chair, staring at the photograph. All this time he thought he'd been protecting his family. But his family had been broken long before he ever spoke up. 3 months later, Owen sat on the front steps of a new house, smaller, quieter, in a different town. His father sat beside him, silent as always. But this time, the silence felt different. Not cold, just tired. David had taken full custody of Owen after Claire's arrest. She was awaiting trial. Ethan was serving his sentence, 15 years to life. The Callaway family, as Owen had known it, no longer existed. David cleared his throat. "You did the right thing, you know." Owen didn't respond. "I know it doesn't feel like it," David continued. "But you did." Owen looked down at his hands. "It doesn't feel like anything." David nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." They sat in silence for a while. Then David spoke again, his voice rough. "I should have seen it. I should have known." "You couldn't have," Owen said. quietly. "Maybe," David said, "but I should have tried." Owen looked at his father. For the first time in months, he saw something in his eyes he hadn't seen before: regret and love. David put his arm around Owen's shoulders. Owen leaned into him. And for the first time since this all began, Owen cried. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, just out of grief, for the brother he thought he had, for the mother he thought he knew, for the family that never really was. A year later, Owen stood in front of a small gravestone. Mia Harding, beloved daughter, forever missed. He placed a single flower at the base of the stone. "I'm sorry it took so long," he whispered. The wind rustled through the trees. Birds sang in the distance. Owen stood there for a long time. Then he turned and walked back to where his father was waiting by the car. As they drove away, Owen looked out the window at the hay. World passing by. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if he'd ever feel whole again. But he knew one thing: the truth had a cost. It always did. But silence had a cost too. And in the end, Owen had chosen the only path he could live with. The one that honored Mia. The one that honored himself. Justice had been served, but the scars would remain forever.